thank you, Amber, for being here today on the GRS, the first episode of our grief recovery podcast. And this is just a platform for others to be able to express themselves and share their journey through grief and let us know their story and the things that they've done to be able to navigate their journey and other things that they're looking to help themselves. So I'd like you to introduce yourself and get started here.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Amber. I'm 34 years old and I have one daughter who's 9. The loss I plan on speaking most about is my dad, who I lost in November of 2018. Before his loss, within the same year, I had my ex-boyfriend pass, and 6 months before that, I had a miscarriage. So I'll be talking about those a little bit, but mostly about my father and then my grandmother's passing that followed my father's.
Yeah. I just want to say my condolences to your losses and the things that you've experienced and losing of your loved ones. It's definitely not an easy journey, and that's why I'm glad that we're both here today and we could connect and share how we've been able to navigate through this journey. So the first question I just want to ask you here is, can you describe the moment you learned of your loss and the immediate emotions you felt in that moment?
Yeah, so I was at work when I got the first call that my dad was having a medical emergency. I had not spoke to him in about a month, which was very odd for us. We spoke almost daily. But due to my previous losses that I had mentioned, I was down a bad path of substances and alcohol, and I was very ashamed of that because my dad fought a lot for his sobriety. So I didn't speak to him much, even though I knew he was accepting and still loved me. There was shame, so I hadn't spoke to him. But I got a call saying that he was being rushed to the hospital, and but when I got there, he was in a coma and they had to put him through a surgery. I told him I loved him and I'd see him after. And the surgery, I'm a little blurry on some details, but it was at least a 6-hour surgery. It started at like maybe 10 o'clock at night. And then by 6 a.m., we were told that he was out of surgery and that they're not sure if he was going to make it, but he was still technically alive. At that point, my sisters had arrived and we all 3 went back to see him. When we got there to see him, he coded. And I remember my first emotion was just being in denial. I asked the doctor what they were going to do. He said there's a 0% chance he's going to make it. And it was almost like a movie. I was the last one in the room. They had to pull me out of the room. So yeah, just denial, felt like I was in a movie.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. And definitely, I know, like you said, denial is for sure that first stage of grief. We don't want to believe it's happening. And I can totally understand your point of view. Like you said, it was like a movie, and everything's like so slow motion in that moment. And you're trying to just hold on to one little idea you're thinking about, one emotion that you're feeling in that moment. It's very hard to process. I'm totally sorry to hear. So I would like to know, how did your grief manifest physically and emotionally in the early days following your loss?
The early days, I was in constant despair. Although I had those previous losses, my dad was by far the biggest loss and something he had been trying to prepare me for because he wasn't in the best health, but I still thought he was Superman and going to live forever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was in just deep depression, kept waiting to wake up from it. I was able to, bring on good emotions sometimes and be kind of positive when I had to, because I was a single mom and my daughter was only 3 at the time. So I didn't really have much choice. So
totally understand that. And did you end up having some support, or did you feel like you didn't have support when you were going through the loss with your dad?
I did not have the support from certain people that I was expecting. But overall, I had good friends. I had my dad's girlfriend when he passed. They had been together almost 7 years and were engaged. And she has been a rock for me. She's been very supportive, always checking in on me and my daughter, as well as my dad's best friend. He has never faltered. He always checks in on us, always makes sure I'm good. If he doesn't hear from me, he makes sure everything's okay. He's went out of his way to make memories with me that I would have made with my dad, such as like riding on the motorcycle. I only ever did that with my dad. And after my dad passed, his friend took that on and has, had adventures with me on the bikes, going on bike runs, and he's kind of taken on the grandpa role with my daughter. So those supports were very helpful.
It's really nice to have, because I could only imagine not being able to have that support. Like myself, I was in college at the time when I heard my mom passed away, and just being around my friends that I just met, they were very supportive. They cried with me when I got the news, and they helped pick me up as well as when I got back home to my family. So I'm just thankful that you were able to have that support, and you still are able to continue to have a relationship with your dad's friend, and that's how you can keep his memory alive. That's a bond that you guys can share together and continue to make the legacy of your dad go on.
Yes, I feel very blessed to have that relationship.
Ma'am. And then in what ways did your understanding of grief evolve as you navigated through different stages of your healing?
I believed that because I was sad, I was grieving, and I had to learn to accept the new reality and still continue living. When I started grieving, it was just pure bitterness. And then I learned that I couldn't live that way. My dad wouldn't want me to live that way. So I realized that I could still miss him and not be sad every single second of the day. And still live a life worth living.
Right, that's perfectly said, because I feel, in my mind, I think that, or in my opinion, I should say, feel like my loved ones I know would want me to have continued to dwell in the memory of their loss and the feelings and those emotions, and they would want you to continue to be happy, at least for myself, I feel, and maybe others as well. Your loved ones are guiding you and still with you, and they don't want you to be sad for the rest of your life, and they want to see you grow and be able to live a life without them. It doesn't mean you're forgetting them, but it's also meaning that you're healing. So no, that's probably something that's hard for people to work on. It's still hard for myself to adjust to. So I totally understand that. And I commend you for being able to continue on with your life and be able to raise your daughter still, and you're looking to heal. And that's the reason why you're here today. And it's amazing to see.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I also would like to know right now if there are any emotions that you're feeling while you're speaking of your story, and how is that a hard transition for you to be able to make, or do you feel it's just easy to talk about it and explain?
It's definitely difficult for me. There's very few times I can mention my dad's name without feeling emotional. It's definitely hard, but it's something that I feel will be very healing and something that he would not want me to sit alone in. So as nervous as I feel, or as, just unsure of it and emotional about it, I also know that it's great to be able to share my story and help others if I can.
It's exactly why we're doing this. So many people out there are grieving, and they don't have anywhere to turn to or any support. And I'm sure once somebody hears your story, they're going to build up the courage and say, hey, I'm ready to start my journey through grief and heal, and feel like you're going to be able to impact some lives once we get this out there and get to explain your story and situation.
Yes.
So how did you approach the concept of self-care while navigating your grief?
At first, I did not. I did not care about self-care at all. It was about just survival, and the only person I had the energy to take care of was my daughter. So the more I went through the motions, I learned that I eventually felt better. Like, okay, you don't want to take the shower, take the shower. You don't want to put on a decent outfit, do it anyways. I started actually believing what we were talking about earlier. People always say like, oh, they want you to be happy. And you're like, yeah, whatever, but I'm not. And then I started eventually realizing that, okay, that's a real thing. That's not just a cliche thing people say. And my dad would be very sad that I wasn't taking care of myself, especially with how much he cared about me. So, yeah.
Okay.
I was
And
not.
Can you just, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll let you finish.
I was not attending to my mental health or physical health how I should, and basically abandoned myself. And then once I realized how little I was caring about myself, there was took a turn for the better in realizing that I could give myself love again, even if I was feeling that deep despair.
See, I can totally understand your point of view where you're saying that you didn't want to take care of yourself, because I felt like my life was just a blur. And it was like, okay, are you taking care of yourself? Even when I was in school, it's like my days were just going by, and I just felt so stagnant, and I wasn't improving, or, I couldn't remember what I ate for dinner the night before sometimes, or, what I did a couple hours ago at times. Just seemed like time was going by so fast, and it was just a blink of an eye every day. And that was a very scary moment for me, being younger. And it's hard to take that step and tell yourself, hey, you're not taking care of yourself. You need to change some of your habits. You need to do something different. And once I feel like you take that step, though, your eyes open so wide to, what I've been doing for these weeks, months on end, years is not good. It's not healthy, and got to make that change.
Exactly.
Let's see here. Another question I would like to ask you: How do you go about creating space for remembrance of your loved ones?
I always acknowledge both my grandmother and my grandfather and my dad on their passing anniversaries, as well as their birthdays and holidays. I keep pictures around the house. This might sound a little strange, but I speak to them. I speak to the pictures as if they're with me. I've always allowed my daughter to feel like she could speak to my dad's memory. I always tell stories about them. I speak to anyone that will listen about any funny memory with my dad, or anytime there's people talking about like donating or helping people in need, is a great time for me to tell stories about how, he was over the road trucker. Even when he was in his own addiction and he was struggling, he would use his last penny to help someone who needed something. So that's something that he always instilled in me. So I love spreading that to other people and keeping his memory alive, and reminding people that even though he had like a tough past, he was an amazing man. And yeah.
No, I do the same exact thing myself. I have a picture of my mom that we had at her celebration of life, and I have it carried in my wallet. And every time I open up my wallet, I look at it. I, go down to the lake here in my town and sit out there every day. Just about, I go for almost 1 or 2 walks a day sometimes, and I'll go sit out at the water and just talk to my mom, talk to my granddad, and I feel their energy with me. There's always 2 bald eagles that I always see every time I go down by the lake, and I know I'm like, that's them with me. I've connected butterflies with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I see a butterfly, I'm saying she's with me, she's here. And just on her birthday was last week, and when I was at football practice, there was a butterfly that was around me a little bit, and it kept just flying over my head. And then the same thing when I was at home, there was one that was just in front of my garage, and it just stayed in that little moment. And I'm like, that's her showing that she's with me today.
Definitely,
so I definitely
your
understand
mom.
her talking to him. Yes, ma'am.
Happy birthday to your mom.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I definitely see signs a lot too. Some people believe in it, some people don't. It's one of the only things that got me through. I see a lot of angel numbers, or anytime I'm really sad, I will randomly see turkeys. And I never thought anything of it. And then I remember this story I always tell about my dad, about him in his small town growing up. Him and his friends stole turkeys from a turkey farm and let them all over the town. And I always just thought it was the funniest thing. So now, like, the first time I saw a turkey, I thought, oh, it's a coincidence. But now I live in an area where they shouldn't be. And I will look out my window and see these goofy looking turkeys. And I'm like, oh, that's my dad.
That's definitely it. That is him.
Yeah.
See, like you said, it's what got you through your grief and still helping you get through I feel like that's a great connection to have. And I hope that some people can look into it and realize, hey, you know, there's signs out there where your loved one is still trying to talk to you through the nature and just through your experiences in the world and your daily life. Who you come across, the choices you make, they're definitely with you, and just got to see them in the signs.
Yeah, 100%. Like right now, I just looked at the clock and it's 9:22, which is my daughter's birthday. And that is what I see as my angel number. So every time that happens, I'm like, okay, hi, Dad. That's
He's
great.
guiding me. Yep. No, it's great energy. Want to ask you, do you know when you felt like you had a turning point in your grief journey and you felt that you were starting on the road to recovery and going forwards?
I'd say when I decided to stop shaming myself for my ways of coping and my ways of surviving. I was very caught in the shame of my addiction, and just thinking about it in the negative light, that I was doing my dad's name bad after all the work he put into his sobriety. Once I was able to get the courage to get sober, that is when I think there was a huge turning point. When I went to treatment to get help, inpatient treatment. And when I was there, it had been about 2.5 years since he had passed. And one of the counselors asked, I had been triggered by something and was upset. Oh, someone had to use, what do you call it? The thing you use to bring someone back to life.
Resuscitator.
Yeah, someone had used that in the facility and it kind of triggered me. And she had asked if I grieved. And I said, yeah, I've been crying for 2 years. And she said, that's not grieving. And if you've been under the influence, you're not grieving. So that was, I'd say that was the turning point when I decided to try to face it sober. And
And are there any ways grief has shaped your view on relationships and connections with others?
Yeah, I'd say that it showed me that grief can bring people together, or it can cause great separation. It also, I learned that you cannot assume that others are emotionally available. At first, I took it very personal that some people who were close to me were not able to offer me the support. But I didn't realize at the time that they were just trying to survive themselves, and they weren't able to offer that. And now I'm able to take that less personally. I've also learned that we all have our own journey. Like they say that, but until you actually go through it, you don't really understand it.
Exactly. That's why where I'm at today is because there's certain people who haven't experienced that type of loss just yet. And it's, nothing against them. It's just, there's people out there that don't have, like you said, there's people out there that don't have anybody that can relate to what they're going through. So it's like, if you don't have that, or you don't have support and you don't really know how to navigate, like, I guess I'm saying there's not much education on grief recovery and ways to truly get better. And it all ties into mental health as well. People decline in their health, in their social life. And it's just, there's not much for people to go out there and say, okay, hey, let me take a look at this. There's times where, like I had therapy once my mom passed away, and the therapist even said that they've never lost a mother, or a parent or anything like that, or a loved one just yet. And I just, once in that moment, once I heard them explain that, I just was like, okay, this is going to be the last session I'm going to do with them. And
no hard
just
feelings.
like, I just don't feel like they relate to what I'm going through. And
exactly.
And I ended up not moving forwards for at least 2 years and trying a different therapist again in the same situation. And that's why I'm trying to host this platform now, is to be able to educate people more on how to get through it, even if especially if you're alone. So I totally understand that. How do you find the courage to share your story with others, and what impact does it have on your current healing process?
I've found a lot of strength in sharing my story and in speaking about my losses. I want to be able to spread the love that my dad gave me. And it really helps me turn the sad story into a positive way to help others. And it just takes away the shame that I felt. I felt a lot of shame in how I dealt with it and other people's opinions, and very worried about saying the wrong thing in case it hurt someone else's feelings. But I had to realize that my journey is about me. Their journey is about them. As long as I'm staying kind, then I'm not doing anything wrong. So
I'd like to see that perspective. That's exactly the same thing that I'm doing. It's just, what way can I honor my mom and my granddad? Yes. And I feel like they were both very helpful people. And I would like to do the same thing. I would like to wake up every day and just know I'm helping somebody. And, me helping that person is also helping myself, because I'm learning from a different perspective, and I'm just always trying to learn. So I feel like this is a perfect project, perfect platform to learn and to just help everybody that's in need.
Yes, I agree.
Can you describe an unexpected emotion you felt during your grief journey that surprised you?
I think the amount of resentment I felt surprised me. I think I thought I was going to be more understanding and whatnot, but I felt a lot of resentment, and the loneliness I felt was surprising. Even though I know you're going to be lonely after you lose someone, I think I expected there to be more long-term support, and the support kind of faded after, not the supports I spoke about earlier, but some of my family and some of friends, the first couple of weeks they check in a lot, and then after a month or two, they kind of let you be. So yeah, just sitting with those emotions and then being able to let them go and move on.
Well, you mentioning, family, like you said, checking on you the first couple of weeks, and after a little bit of time goes by, changes. I'd like to say or ask you, can you speak to the challenges you faced in maintaining relationships while coping with your loss?
Yeah, I had a very hard time maintaining relationships. Even people who were close to me, I still pushed them away. It was very hard for me to see any point, and this sounds very just like depressing, but this is where I was at the time. I didn't see any point in having relationships with anyone else, because you're just going to lose them. And I had put everything into my dad, and he had put everything into me. And yeah, for a long time, I just didn't see the point of companionship or anything, because, I was thinking, they say they're going to be there, then they're not going to be there. I was very black and white thinking, and kind of felt like because of how I was coping in unhealthy ways, I felt like I deserved to be alone. I didn't deserve friends. I didn't deserve people to feel bad for me because of how I was dealing with it. And I've obviously now learned that's not true and lean more into relationships and support. I was able to maintain a relationship with my therapist, which was very helpful. I began seeing her a year or two before my dad passed, so she kind of already knew things before that. And then I was able to still see her afterwards and after treatment and all of that, and still see her to this day. So that was a huge help. And she's helped me a lot and reminded me that I do need people and I deserve relationships and I deserve that happiness and connection.
What role does creativity like writing or art play in expressing your grief and processing your emotions?
I love to write. I have had a block since my dad has passed. But I do now, I like to write little letters to him. I like to write poems. Sometimes my daughter and I will draw him pictures. We, attach letters to balloons and send them up. Love to listen to a lot of music that my dad used to listen to and share that with my daughter. And yeah, sorry.
Oh no, I can finish.
I was just going to say, like, I am a very creative person, and that's something that I am still working on, being able to express that side of me again.
I know, I totally love hearing that you love writing, and same thing that as soon as my mom passed away that summer, I just was trying to make music and songs. I made even a song for her, and it's something that I've been thinking about, just going back and like, maybe I can redo this, or, and like I've had a writer's block, I would say, for a little bit, but me and my fiance try to do little painting sessions or just different things to help your creativeness come back alive. And
yes,
I feel like it's very important, even if it's me just cutting the grass, I find a way to try to make it an art, just, it feels good.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. And especially when you write, it feels like you can just flow and just let your mind go, unless you're trying to really, write something very creative. So I totally get that.
Yes.
Let's see here. What do you wish people understood about the complexities of your grief experience and the path to healing?
I wish they would just maybe understand. Sorry,
Oh no, you're okay.
I say I just wish they would understand that no matter how someone chooses to deal with grief, or no matter your opinion of them, that everyone deserves that support and that love and that constant companionship, or just that support from afar. There's many times that I felt that I didn't deserve my dad's girlfriend checking in on me, or I felt guilty for telling his friend I was sober when I was not. But realizing that, like, even in that grief, you still deserve that love no matter what.
I think that same thing too, because a lot of people, like you said, they're alone and they start thinking all these different thoughts and emotions, and it can get really lonely when you are stuck in your head and you don't feel like you have anybody behind you helping to pick you up and keep you going. And that can be very heavy on shoulders. That's why we're doing this here, and I'm glad that we're able to hear your story. And the fact that you're pointing that out for people, don't think people truly understand that no matter what has happened to you, you're still deserving of love.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really hard concept to grasp when all you can see is, darkness and no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And when you think of, especially when it's in capacity of like a parent, like for you and for I, when that is such a great love, it's very hard to think that anyone else can, and no one can replace that love or fill that void. But the love they had for you is so great that they want you to have whatever love and support that you can get,
Yeah. I think we have time for 2 more questions here.
Okay.
This first one, can you discuss a role of forgiveness of yourself or others in your healing process?
Yeah, forgiveness has been crucial. I think without forgiving, well, first I had to forgive my dad for, not being a robot superhero and living forever. And then I had to forgive myself for how I handled it, for how I was not able to, quote unquote, save him. Sorry, got emotional for a minute.
Oh, you okay?
Can you repeat the question again?
Can you discuss the role of forgiveness of yourself or others in
Yes.
your healing process?
Okay, sorry.
No,
So
you're okay.
yeah, after I was able to forgive him, which there wasn't a lot. I was not very angry. I was just angry for losing the relationship, and a lot of my forgiveness had to go to myself, as I mentioned, but also to my family. I had to forgive them for hurt they didn't even know that they caused.
Mhm.
I had to forgive them for not being on the same emotional level that I wanted them to be at. And yeah, I had to forgive a lot of people in my life, whether or not they apologized. That was a huge thing. I was waiting for a lot of apologies after my dad died. A lot of people to be like, oh, hey, sorry we weren't there. Sorry we just judged you. Sorry we were talking about you instead of helping you. And I had to realize, like, I have to give those apologies to myself.
Right.
If people understood the gravity of their actions, they probably wouldn't have done them. My therapist, the big thing that I've learned is most of the time, people's negative actions are due to their ignorance and not maliciousness. And not ignorance in like a you're not smart way, just not being
Just
aware
not being educated on
the
process of grief. And,
mental health, sobriety. That was a big thing. I was very afraid of my family knowing that I was not sober because of everything they had been through with my dad. And I had to forgive myself and stop living in that shame and let them, accept me or not. So.
Then the last question here, as you look ahead, how do you envision continuing to honor your loved one while moving forward with your life?
The biggest thing I'm doing to honor both my dad and my grandma is just like we spoke before, just being kind and helpful. And one thing I know that my grandma especially would hate is just how sad I am. And I want to, not necessarily now, but how sad I was and how I let sadness, cover my whole life. I just want to continue in my faith. That's something my grandma was a huge believer in. Her Lord and her faith got her through everything. And I want to continue to lean into my faith and most of all, be happy. I know that will honor them the most, being happy and enjoying my time with my kid instead of wasting it being sad that they're not here. Just appreciating their memories and moving forward and continuing their traditions and continuing to speak about them. And yeah.
Well, before we run out of time here, I just want to say thank you, Amber, for coming on the show today and being our first participant in this project that we're doing for Grief Recovery Services.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.